15 years ago, in the small town of Blackwater, a girl named Sophie vanished. The town was alive with whispers and theories, the woods around her home combed over and over by volunteers, police, and her desperate parents, Mark and Karen. But Sophie was never found. However, the truth was far darker than anyone could have imagined. On that night, under the cloak of a storm, driven by a mix of fear, anger, and madness, Mark and Karen had taken Sophie's life. In a moment, they would spend the rest of their days trying to erase from their minds. They buried her deep in the woods, hidden under a mound of earth and stones, hoping the secret would die with them. Life moved on, but not for Mark and Karen. They lived in the shadow of their sin, their home a mausoleum of memories and guilt. They grew old, their love turning into a twisted bond of shared culpability. They spoke little of Sophie, each word a dagger to their souls. Then one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over their now empty nest, the phone rang. Mark, his hands trembling from years of remorse, picked up. The voice on the other end was unmistakable, though aged. It was Sophie's. "Mom, Dad, I've missed you," the voice said, a chilling echo of the daughter they had lost and killed. Karen, who had been standing by the window, turned to stone. Her face drained of all colour. Mark's voice was barely a whisper. "Sophie? How can this be? I've been away, but I'm coming back. I'll see you soon." The voice continued, with an eerie calmness. The line went dead. Panic set in. They checked the locks, pulled the curtains, and whispered in hushed, frantic tones. They had buried her deep. There was no way she could have survived. No one knew but them. They had lived with this secret, this sin. Was it a cruel prank, a ghost, or could it be something more sinister? Days passed in a haze of fear. Every creak of the house, every shadow seemed like Sophie returning. They couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, waiting for the knock that would never come. 2 weeks later, another call. This time the voice was clearer, stronger. "I'm close now. I've learned so much." Karen screamed, and Mark dropped the phone, his heart racing. They decided they needed to see the grave to confirm their nightmare. Under the cover of night, they went to the woods, the very spot where they had committed their unforgivable act. The ground was undisturbed, no signs of digging, no one had been there. But as they stood over the grave, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a woman, looking much like Sophie would have at 30, her eyes filled with a knowing sadness. "Sophie?" Karen whispered, her voice breaking. The woman smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You thought you could erase me? I've lived in every moment you tried to forget. But I've also lived a life you couldn't imagine." She explained, in a voice that seemed to come from beyond, that she had somehow transcended death, living in another plane or time, learning, growing. She had come back not for revenge, but to confront them, to make them face what they had done. "I forgive you," she said, "but you must live with this truth. I am free now, but you never will be." With that, she vanished, leaving Mark and Karen in the cold, silent woods, the weight of their sin heavier than ever. They returned home, never to speak of it again, but the calls continued, once a year on the anniversary of Sophie's disappearance, a reminder of the daughter they killed and the ghost they could never escape.